is, it's been a very big year. So I figured a nice little comedy show would be a great way to wind up what was a rather crazy and out of order year for everyone. It was a really big year for all sorts of things, new hobbies and self-care particularly. We all sort of got to delve in the world of self-care a lot more. In my case, a big year in self-care quite literally meant putting on about 10 kilos. Self-care for me is coffee and a muffin. If a lot of people call their body a temple, if my body were a temple, it'd be the Temple of Doom. No, I kid. But I've been trying to get a bit healthier. What with being stuck indoors and working an office job now, I thought I'd, go join CrossFit. That seems to be what people do. You join CrossFit. And I learned something very interesting about CrossFit, which is that CrossFit is a lot like being drunk, in that you turn up, you push yourself way too far. You end up by the end of it having a look of nothing but pure regret on your face and wanting to throw up. So I found that rather peculiar about CrossFit. But beyond that, I also joined volleyball this year. A good chance to try new things. In volleyball, it's one of the very few, if not only, circumstances in which it is acceptable to spike someone else. And I even considered giving taxidermy a go, but I thought, nah, stuff that. I did give, I think myself and a lot of other people, gave baking a crack, whilst on the other hand, a lot of people decided just to get baked. Good opportunity working from home and whatnot. But look, I can only hope that drug dealers took as much concern as, your average shopkeeper, and that perhaps, maybe they had a nice little sanitizer pump for you. You can deal drugs, but don't spread COVID. I don't judge. Cycling was another huge hobby that people decided to get into. I gave it a try myself, and just to let you know how well that went, I sold my bike last week. It was good fun getting out and cycling, but the problem was that as an Australian driver, I found that I started hating myself a lot just for being on the roads. Sourdough, another huge hobby. Finally brought some culture to Australia, which was good. And to get interactive with you guys, let me know what were some of the crazy COVID hobbies that you all jumped into.
Oh, man.
Don't all jump in at once.
Ooh.
No one?
I cross-stitched a pizza. Does that count?
Crossed what? Sorry?
I cross-stitched a pizza.
What do you mean you cross-stitched a pizza?
It was a picture of a pizza.
Cross-stitching.
All the beauty and satisfaction of pizza, apart from the part where you can actually enjoy it. Anyone else?
Everyone else is too boring.
That's all right. We have a cross-stitch pizza. No, but look, I work in marketing. I studied in it for years now, and I've gotten into working in marketing. And one of the professional hazards with marketing is that when you go to the shops, you can't just shop. You tend to have a wonder, and you look at brands, and you sort of wonder why they've made the decisions they have. And the other hazard of my shopping experience is I shop at Aldi. So if you don't know what Aldi's like, you go in for milk and bread, you come out with a log splitter and a toothbrush you never wanted. But one of the things that Aldi sells, obviously they sell a lot of very, generic and odd brands to avoid getting in trouble with proper name brands. But their toilet paper, for whatever reason, is called Confidence. Now, I don't know about you. I've never found myself sitting on the loo going, geez, this is a bit too stressful for me, to be honest. This is a bit much. Generally with branding, we in the marketing world, we say that people buy for the way a product makes them feel or what they associate with a product, and then they justify it with logic. But, for example, toilet paper, it's usually things like Kleenex or it's sorbent to let you know that it's soft and it's reliable and there's puppies on it. So, it's wholesome, it's reliable, it's soft. But Confidence, you're sitting there on the loo just, thinking about life going by, and you just get to the end, you have to wipe, and it's like, oh, this is all a bit too much for me, to be honest. I really shouldn't have bought Kleenex. Should have been Confidence. But that's the fun of brand names that have adjectives, is that you can flip them around and consider what they'd sound like otherwise. So for confidence, the opposite of that might be low self-esteem, and that again, not really something that is relevant to the toilet experience, but still there. Or nice and natural becomes nasty and toxic, which also happens to sound like a really unhealthy relationship. But yeah. So that's the fun of marketing. And in marketing, I did start a new job this year. I just got out of uni, so it was a nice experience to start a new job. I work with some really nice people. There's about 5 of us in the office. We're only a small business, but an office full of 5 men. We have a good laugh. They're very supportive. They were very positive to about me saying that I wanted to give stand-up a go. My boss actually gave a really good pep talk. He said, I love to see people who dance with confidence when they can't dance, people who sing despite the fact that they can't sing, and people who do comedy even though they're not funny. And given that he used to work in the music industry, I could only think he must have been a very good musician. We'll see if I still have a job next Monday. But no, they were really positive and they're good people to work with. There is a bit of an age gap in the office, and like I said, a lot of them work in the music industry, so we'll get music references coming through. So the boss, the boss is about 50, my supervisor's about mid-40s, another worker is 36, and then there's a 21-year-old and myself, a humble 23-year-old. But the boss will be telling us about his musical heyday, telling us his crazy stories about how his hair used to look like Jimmy Barnes. Problem was, myself and the other young fella had to actually Google who Jimmy Barnes was. He was most unimpressed by this. He said, "How have you not heard of Jimmy Barnes?" And I said, "Well, unless my dad was holding a Walkman up to his balls, I guess I wouldn't have had a chance, to be honest." For those of you who don't know what a Walkman is, it's a bit like an iPod Shuffle, except it sucks and you kind of stuck on the one track. But so the age gap generally isn't a huge problem. But as far as us as a team, we work well together, and we have a habit of using analogies, because in the marketing world with clients, you often have to explain things that don't make a lot of sense or are a bit abstract to someone who doesn't work in the marketing world. But sometimes we have our analogies for everyday life, which are less than appropriate. In one circumstance, a member of our office, again, I will often leave them unnamed personally for fear of getting them in trouble. But a member of our office was purchasing a Mustang earlier this year. We got on to discussing, the difference between comparing and contrasting a Mustang, which is a muscle car, to a Mazda BT50, a massive ute, for anyone who isn't overly familiar with that. And for whatever reason, his analogy for that was, it's like choosing between whether to marry a hooker or a nun. Now, I didn't really get it, but such are analogies. They're a bit abstract. One of our web developers, for example, he saw a website that it was a bit overly colourful and had too much going on. He said it looked like a clown took a shit on it. Again, that analogy was at least ample, but there's one analogy and metaphor in the office that stands above all else, and this one will definitely come from someone unnamed because it could get them in a lot of trouble. It's that, and this is not my opinion, but it is still a laugh of analogy, but women are a lot like trains, was the statement, in that you get on, and if you don't like the destination, you can jump back off and find another one. Which, as you can imagine, an interesting opinion of it. Not quite my approach to women. I have to note that, or I'm going to be in a lot of trouble after this. And it got me wondering, though, if women are like trains, what are men like? And I thought very quickly, men are like buses. Because if you miss one, there'll be another one there in 5 minutes. And on that note, I thought to myself, well, to be honest, relationships are a lot like buses too. You shouldn't chase a relationship because there'll be another one coming sooner or later anyway. And it's a lesson I did have to learn this year. I got out of a relationship earlier on in the year, and it was definitely a learning curve. And despite the fact that it was my choice to leave, I still often found myself thinking, oh, maybe this was, my only chance at a good relationship. And that's just not the case. It's really empowering to know that, look, there's plenty of good people out there. You'll get another chance. Life is fine. It'll all be well. But I have to say, my boss and my coworkers didn't find that a very good excuse when I showed up to work late one day. I said, the next bus was supposed to be there in 5 minutes. It was 30. They didn't appreciate that. Now, what I like about the idea of being a comedian, and part of why I want to get into it and give it a good go, is that unlike my old job in customer service, I'm not expected to smile. It's one career where you don't actually have to smile. That awkward customer service smile. And the problem with a customer service smile is you'll find yourself walking down the street or down the aisle of a Woolworths, a shopping centre, and if you make eye contact, that awkward eye contact that we all hate making, I'll just smile. And it unsettles people a lot. And you never know if they're going to talk to you. I get a bit awkward because people often, I grew up in Dubai, came back to Australia, and people seem to be too happy to talk in Australia. I say too happy, they're just willing to say, hey, how's it going? But you never know when they're going to say it. So if you're walking down the street, you walk past someone and go, are they going to speak? They're not going to speak. I'm not saying I'm socially awkward, but I'm socially awkward. But one person who really, really hates it is my dad. He's not a socially incapable man by any standard, but he hates it when strangers come up and talk to him in public. So one time I suggested to him, well, why don't you put headphones in whether or not regardless of whether you're listening to music or not. And he said to me, look, I don't want to seem like an antisocial bastard. Sorry, a miserable antisocial person. And I said to him, but that's exactly what you are. Make up your mind. But no, I have to backpedal a little on that one. My dad's not a miserable man. He's actually a very positive man. He's just got a very different approach to positivity. Given that we're all about self-care this year and self-improvement, particularly with this circle. My dad's brand of positivity is what I call negative positivity, which is everything is great because everything sucks. I don't completely get it, but look at this. It's my dad's the kind of guy who's like, cheer up, don't be bothered by it. World's fucked anyway. That's his approach to things. Bit odd, bit different from how I'd approach things. Is there anyone here who knows people who have really contradictory logic that doesn't quite make sense? Oh, yeah. So Ghibli?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah. No, let us know.
Okay, good. Yeah, I know a few people who are like that. I can totally relate to that situation, so I completely understand what you're talking about.
Can you tell us what it is?
Oh, there's too many. Definitely since my life is just so hectic. I can definitely say I have had like a few friends who would tell me one thing and then do the other and say, oh, well, that's wrong. You shouldn't have done that. But then they go ahead and do it themselves and they act like it's totally normal and totally fine.
And I think it's funny she mentioned that because it's like when you ask friends for advice, there's kind of that unspoken terms and condition agreement of please give me all the advice and good opinion you have with this explicit acknowledgement that I'm not going to listen. And I think part of acknowledging that is just part of being a good friend sometimes. Yeah, any other ones? Anyone else with strange views on the world? Go on,
I heard someone say that women were like trains recently. It was really weird.
Oh my
well,
God,
next time you can tell them men are like buses.
Absolutely.
I love it.
When I was originally told that analogy, I was expecting something far worse. I thought the person in question was going to say something really misogynistic, like they're always late, or they cost too much, or they're never on time. I already said that one, never on time. But thankfully not. But onto a different topic. Isolation has been a bit of a drain on a lot of people. It's been exhausting. It's been different. It's been awkward. It's been enraging. But there's one group of people who weren't overly affected by isolation, among others. I'm sure there's more. But one in particular is gamers. Gamers weren't really affected. I'm a gamer myself, but gamers, objectively weren't affected too much by self-isolation. Some of them leave the house so rarely they didn't know there was a pandemic on. A friend of mine actually managed to revolutionize his life in 2 ways, thanks to this whole pandemic situation. The first way was, that he's a big gamer himself. He's a League of Legends player. If you don't know what League of Legends is, it's essentially, it's one of the really popular online video games at the moment, has been for many years. I don't know why, it bores the crap out of me, but everyone's got their own taste. And he's big into that, and he found out that his uni actually has a scholarship for their League of Legends team. They actually have a League of Legends team. That worked out okay. That was one of his reasons to leave the house, gone. And the other one is he started ordering his groceries online. So those were his only two reasons to leave the house. So he made the best of COVID. I haven't seen him in a while. He hasn't left the house since. I did catch up with him, sort of towards the start of it. He's as pale as ever, typical gamer. But after this, I imagine he'll be see-through from not seeing the sun. So, but I'm a gamer myself, and often video games are really hard to explain to people who don't play video games. They don't see the appeal in it. They don't quite get it. And there's one game in particular that's actually that difficult to explain the appeal of, that some gamers don't actually get it. A few of you will actually know it, but it's Animal Crossing is the name of the game. And those who know it love it, or those who have played it generally love it, but otherwise it's really hard to explain. And essentially, you're a villager, you're a little character, you're dropped in a village full of animals, you're the only human, it's not really relevant to anything, you just are. And you build up your town, you build up your house. But the main premise of the game, in a really bad way to sum it up, is that essentially you're paying off your mortgage to a raccoon, whatever you call it. That is the main objective of the game. And for some reason, people don't quite get it at that point. Even myself, I'll be sitting there on a quiet Sunday going, I've just spent 3 hours and I haven't even paid off my mortgage. As I imagine many of you probably haven't finished paying off your mortgage now, and at least you're doing something with your life. But I think that's what people don't get about video games, is that video games, there's no tangible benefit to it. It's purely entertainment. But the reason it sort of differs from other mediums, such as, say, movies or books, is that you can just, fully sit back and absorb a movie and a book and just take it in without any extra effort added, generally, unless it's confusing. There's no extra effort. While video games are unique in that you can spend 3 hours on a Sunday getting angry at the same Mario level because you keep dying. So, in fact, one time I actually had the neighbour's kid come knock on the door. They'll sometimes come around and say, "How's it going?" And he actually asked me, "Why are you saying the F word so much, Kaleb?" Just the way video games are. But yeah, not everyone gets it. But yeah, there's certainly a group of people who aren't overly affected by things. As far as the other side of things, a lot of us had to work from home. I didn't have to work from home. I was lucky enough for that, but I did move out into my own place for the first time ever. I've been in share houses for many years, and it's been friends often ask me, "Is it lonely living by yourself? Does your life change much?" And to be honest, no. It's delightful living alone, which really highlights just how antisocial I am. But that is what it is. But there are certain disadvantages to living at home, such as I was once late for work because I couldn't find my phone. And the problem when you can't find your phone is normally you just get someone to call you. So you could see the issue there is I thought I should call someone to call me, but I don't have a phone. So that didn't really work. Such is the consequence of the 21st century. Anyone below the age of 30 has moved from the umbilical cord to the USB cable. Not much has changed then, really. But throughout this whole thing, the whole working from home thing, it's actually, interestingly, research has shown that in Australia it's made us more productive. Everyone reckons it's because we're not being distracted by workmates as much, we're not commuting as much, we've got more time and energy in the day to work. I'm not saying those aren't relevant, but I think it's because you can drink on the job and no one tells you off. I don't know about you, but a whiskey or two and I'm a lot more productive. Any more than that, and I'm falling asleep at my desk, but at least my boss isn't shouting at me anymore. And I think I'll round up the show with a bit of a bit of a thought about the year. It's developed interestingly. It's been strange. Towards the start of the year, in 3 months, so much changed for me personally. I went from, I got a new job. I moved to a new city. I'd finished my degree. I was doing lots of interviews. I got out of a relationship. It was a very big start to a year. That was all in the span of 3 months between February and April. And I was doing lots of interviews at the start of the year, and interviews don't really stress me, but they are still stressful when you go do them. It's like applying for jobs is no stress, but you go to interviews and it takes a lot out of you to do. My interview for my current job, I honestly don't know how I got it. I think my boss doesn't know how I got it. But the interview actually went for 3 hours. A 3-hour interview. I was sick. I was tired. I could barely keep my eyes open. I had to manage to keep up the energy for 3 hours. It was a heck of a process. But and it's a lot like this year, really. It wasn't comfortable. It was draining. It was, you had to keep your wits ahead of you. You had to keep up with it, and it just seemed to go on forever. But it all ends up well in the end. And luckily, partway through the interview, I did get a break. And I got a chance to go to the toilet and take a breather, try not to break it down, because it was a stressful start to my year. But luckily, they bought their toilet paper at Aldi. So I had all the confidence I needed. And if that teaches us anything about, 2020 and difficult years like this, it's that all you need is toilet paper to get through it.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much for watching. I hope you guys have a lovely night. It was a pleasure talking to you. And all the best. Stay safe, stay happy.
Okay.
Yay!
Yeah.